Parsons, State Representative Don Parsons from North Central Cobb County and Woodstock in Cherokee County. I want to talk to you about a bill that passed on the last night of the session, House Bill 409. This is a bill that I wasn't going to say anything more about. It eventually passed on the last night of the session. I voted against it, but that's just the way things happen. I voted against a lot of bills over the years, and I've had my own legislation voted against, and when it's over, you just move on and move to the next things that come up in the next sessions. But there are some things about this bill I want to talk about. I had a reporter from 11 Live come to the House on this past Friday and asked me some questions about the bill, and the report was on 11 Live on this past Friday night. And like he told me, and like I know that most of what I said would never be on the broadcast, but just a few comments I made is all that was on the broadcast. He'd asked some really good questions, and I thought that I gave him some pretty good answers, but of course none of that was actually in that broadcast. But I want to talk to you about this legislation. First of all, I want to say this. I care very, very deeply about children and children on school buses, so much so that several years ago, after a child had been killed out here on Davis Road, not far from where I live, this child was killed after she had gotten off a school bus, was hit and killed by a car. The school bus had already left. It was not really a school bus violation, but the child was hit and killed. Very tragic thing to have happened, and it raised concern in my area about the issue. And I had a couple of young mothers come to me, along with law enforcement and school bus drivers, to tell me about something I didn't know about, and that was that there are third-party vendors who will provide for free the cameras and the equipment and associated apparatus to go on school bus arms that will record traffic violations when people speed across past the bus, when they don't stop, when the bus has its lights on and stopped and has the school bus arm down and things of that nature. We'll record that, send it back to this third party. They will review that to see if there was a violation. If there is a violation, they will send that back to the local law enforcement for that jurisdiction, which will review it further and decide whether there should be a civil fine issued for that violation. That's the way it works. It's been very, very successful. I'm very proud of that legislation. And the fine, as we passed it then, I believe was $250. That's what it is now. Will be until the law goes into effect on July the 1st. Well, this year in another county, I think it was Henry County, a child was hit and killed by a driver of a vehicle that hit the child when the lights were on, and the person should not have was in violation of the law, and unfortunately the child was killed. And those parents had gone to a legislator in that area and asked them to pass legislation that would significantly raise the fines, along with some other things about school bus routes and things like that. Well, this legislator, a freshman, she had a bill, not House Bill 409, but another bill. She had this drawn up that would have increased the fines significantly. I think originally she made the fines in that bill around $10,000, from $250 to $10,000, but it didn't pass. That didn't pass with that language in the House committee. The House committee passed it out a lot differently than what she wanted. That House committee passed it out with for the civil violation that would remain $250. However, for any another violation or any subsequent violations in that same jurisdiction, then the penalty would still be $250, but the information would have been reported to the insurance company of the owner of the vehicle. And remember, for these violations, the violation goes to the owner of the vehicle. Now, there is a process that the owner can go through if somebody else was driving the vehicle, but they have to do that through court. It's not just a matter of calling up and say, hey, that wasn't me, I'm the owner. That's the car with the license plate is mine, but I wasn't the driver. There's a process you have to go through. It goes to the owner of the vehicle. Now, there's another type of violation for that same incident, and that is that a moving traffic violation can be, a citation can be issued by law enforcement. If law enforcement happens to see that violation, they can issue a violation, which is a moving traffic violation, And that can also be initiated by the school bus driver himself or herself by a log that they keep where they make notes of any incidents, any violations, people passing, speeding by or not stopping, so on and so forth. If there's not a camera on the bus, the school bus arm that records those things, and that's what has to happen. That's what the law calls for the school bus driver to do. And of course, the school bus driver, his job is to drive that vehicle safely and keep the kids on the bus safe. And it's problematic for that bus driver to do that. That's one reason they were very interested in this other method of doing it to begin with. But that is a method to do it. That is a different thing. It's a high and aggravated misdemeanor in that case, and the penalty is different in this legislation that eventually would pass out of House Bill 409. But in that bill that she passed out of the House committee, it would have raised that to no less than $250, but no more than $1,000, and the possibility of a year in jail. That's what passed out in her original bill in the House that passed out of committee, but never got to the House floor. Not 409, but another bill. So on the last day of the session, she had another bill that had passed out of the House, had something totally different than school bus safety, totally different issue. And in the Senate, she was able to, and I don't know what exactly happened. I wasn't in those meetings, but in the Senate committee, eventually this happened, I believe, in the Senate Rules Committee. They took all the language out of this bill, House 409, that was originally there, something totally different than school bus safety. Took all that language out and put in what she really wanted, the legislator really wanted, to a degree. In that bill, in that substitute that they passed and came back to the House on the last night of the session, that legislation for the civil penalty that's initiated by the school bus camera, for that, it raises the penalty to $1,000 from $250, quadruples it, and on any another violation or any subsequent violations in the same jurisdiction, that information will be sent to for the owner of the vehicle, will be sent to their insurance company. For the moving traffic violation, that would become a high and aggravated misdemeanor with a penalty of $1,000 and the possibility of a year in jail. Now, those are significantly higher than what was in the bill that this legislator got passed out of committee in the House but never got to the floor. But she got what she wanted, which was much more severe on this House Bill 409 as a Senate substitute on the last night of the session. Well, this bill came over on last night, with that substitute, like a lot of others. I mean, we had, each chamber gets a lot of these where changes have been made in the other chamber. So along with many others and conference committee reports and things like that to keep piling up on our desk on that last night, that was one of them. And I try to read all of them. And I saw this one, and I saw that these penalties had been quadrupled. And it caught my attention, of course, on an issue that I had worked on before and spent a lot of time several years ago working on. But as I read it, I thought, well, I'm surprised, first of all, that the Senate passed out like that. I really was. But then I thought, well, probably because of the number of bills that we're going to be taking up tonight between now and, around midnight when we adjourn, sine die, I thought it won't come up. There's going to be a lot of bills that just don't come up. There won't be time for it. More, credible bills will come up. I thought it probably won't come up, but I was ready. Now, it's important to say that when these things happen, when a bill comes back from the other chamber, and we'll just use the House for example, when a bill comes back from the Senate that has been amended or a substitute has been put in, which happened in this case, then it's not debatable. The author of the bill has the opportunity, if recognized by the Speaker, to make a motion to agree or disagree with what the other chamber's done. In this case, the author of the bill made a motion to agree to that Senate substitute. Remember, the Senate substitute was totally different language than what had originally been sent to the Senate. That author can make that motion, and the only thing that anybody else in the chamber can do is to basically request to ask questions, which I did. I pushed my light to ask the questions, and the speaker recognized me, and I got to ask some questions. The first thing I asked her was, are you comfortable with the extent that these penalties are going to? And the author said that she was. And then I got the bill, was holding the bill, and within a question, which is the way you have to ask these things, within the mode of a question, I read parts of the lines that those penalties ran. Is it not true that this is what they're raising them to? And she said that they were. And then in the mode of a question, I tried to point out that I was the original author of the legislation that allowed for the stop arms to be put on the cameras, if the ones that are actually paid for by another company. And here again, that company gets a part of that civil fine. So I wanted to point out, but I did point out also that having done that myself over the years, I've defended that. I mean, a lot of people not happy with the fact that they can get this civil fine that is recorded by another company, not a government entity, but another company, and they can eventually get that fine, and unhappy the fact that the fine goes to the owner of the vehicle, not the driver of the vehicle. And I've defended that over the years, because I think that because I think it's very important that we protect our children. I see these little guys out here on my street going down to the bus stop. And of course, my children went to public schools and they rode the school buses. And I get aggravated when I'm on the road, when I'm going in the morning or coming back, and see people that don't stop for the school bus or speed around them. There needs to be a penalty. There's no doubt about that. My issue is that the penalty shouldn't be as high as it's going to. I think going from $250 to $500 might have been okay, but we didn't have that opportunity. So when the author of the bill gets to make that motion, it's not debatable. You can't go up and ask to speak from the well on it. All you can do is hope that you can ask questions and hope that you can make everybody familiar with what the bill's done. Now, I think that the 11 Live report, I believe, and I don't want to, try to say what somebody else is thinking or whatever, but I kind of believe that they were trying to make it look like that the legislature uses this process to sneak things in on the last night of the session, things like that. Well, I don't know how else it would work in a legislature like we have. We have a we have a part-time legislature. It's bicameral, 2 bodies. It's set by law to be no more than 40 days. At midnight on the last day, that's when, all this legislating is supposed to stop. So there's a deadline. And so I think that the process we have is the right process, and if the process works, if it's done correctly, it's okay. It's incumbent upon an author that has a bill that's been changed in the other chamber. It's incumbent upon them, when they go to make that motion to agree, when they make the motion to agree to the changes that have been made in the other chamber, it's incumbent upon them to tell what those changes are and to explain what those changes are. Now, the freshman didn't do that. I had to ask the question and bring it out in the mode of a question exactly what those changes were. You hope everybody in the chamber read the substitute, but probably they didn't all do it. So I got to do that, but it's incumbent upon the legislator that has the bill to go and explain what those changes are. If that's done, and if the questions are asked, and if people read the changes when it comes to their desk, then the process, I think, is working correctly. It's not the process I have a problem with on this bill. My problem is the extent to which the penalty has been raised, quadrupled. Keep in mind, these go to the ones with the school bus cameras that are collected on those, the ones that go to the third party. Civil fines, those go to the owner of the vehicle. And then there's a process you have to go through if that vehicle is being driven by somebody else before you can get that changed. $1,000 is a lot of money. $1,000 is a lot of money. And it's enough that could cause somebody not to be able pay their rent, not to be able to pay their house payment, not to be able to make their car payment, not be able to get food on the table for their children or get to work so they can make money. I mean, these are serious things I think a lot of people don't think about on fines and penalties. When you penalize somebody so much that they can't make a living and they can't do these basic things, including making their payments for things and putting food on the table, this is serious stuff. Violating the school bus laws is serious, yes. And that's another thing I would say. I had listened to the testimony that the author of the bill made in the Senate committee before she got this passed over in the Senate, and she had said this keeps happening time after time after time, which I think, giving her the benefit of the doubt, I think she was saying that, that their violations happen time after time, but I think that it could have been interpreted as the same person is doing it time after time. I don't think that's happening. I think anybody that gets a $250 fine would be extremely careful before they violated that again. I got a violation one time of violating a stop arm camera. Not a stop arm, a red light camera, excuse me. A red light camera over at 41. And the penalty was $75. And believe me, it got my attention. I mean, I shouldn't have. It was, the stop arm cameras, not stop arm, but the red light cameras can be very, very tricky. I think anybody's ever gone through one knows that. And you have to be very careful. But to get even a $75 fine really got my attention. Didn't like having to go pay that. $1,000 for violating the stop arm or getting a moving traffic violation. That's a lot of money, and I think that a lesser fine would get people's attention just as well, and not put families and people into a situation where they may have serious problems. And with that, I think I pretty well covered this. I just want to make sure that I give people the opportunity to know, what the bill was about, my reasoning for voting against it, if anybody has a question about it, and to also explain the system, and to explain that in my opinion, the system is tricky on those agree-disagrees on the last night of the session that come back, but it's not necessarily people trying to sneak something in. I guess it does happen, but if it's done correctly, if the author of the bill and the legislators who are going to make a vote on that bill do everything that they need to do and give it due diligence, then at least the process will have worked correctly, whether the outcome of the vote turns out the way you want it to be or not. So if you have any questions, my email address is don@donparsons.net. Send me an email, and I'll try to answer your questions the best I can on this, or anything else for that matter. So with that, be careful out there driving around, and watch out and don't violate any of our traffic laws, and especially be careful around these children getting on and off buses.